The interview was a major contribution to making my parents' relationship worse and has since hurt countless others.
Queen Camilla just exploded with emotion, and it's all because of Prince William. Reports now claim that the future king has secretly started stripping away royal titles and privileges from Camilla's family. After years of trying to carve a space for her children and grandchildren inside royal life, Camilla is watching everything fall apart, piece by piece. So why is William starting his royal purge now? And how far is he willing to go to reset the royal family? Join us as we uncover the drama, betrayal, and emotional fallout shaking the palace to its core. Prince William's royal purge. According to reports, Queen Camilla completely lost control when she found out Prince William had quietly started removing royal titles and privileges from her family. This wasn't a disagreement or a simple pushback. We are talking about a full emotional storm behind palace walls. Her children and grandchildren were never part of the official royal line. However, they had slowly been welcomed into royal spaces over the years. William decided that was no longer acceptable. Without any warning, he began erasing their ceremonial roles, removing their names from internal documents, and making sure they were excluded from public events. Camilla felt deeply betrayed. To her, this was not only a shift in royal policy, but a direct blow to everything she had worked to build within the monarchy. But for Queen Camilla, that is just the beginning of the storm. Keep watching as we break down why she found William's action offensive. After several years of hard labor, Queen Camilla believed she had finally carved out a place for her family in the royal structure, but it was being dismantled piece by piece. The impact was immediate, deeply personal, and full of emotion. It all started quietly. A private order passed within royal circles. Nothing about it was meant for headlines or outside eyes. But as with most things inside the palace, secrets don't stay secret for long. Once the information slipped out, it spread fast and hit the monarchy hard. Prince William had made a decision. He was done waiting in the wings. He didn't need to be king yet to start shaping the monarchy the way he believed it should be. His first step? A sharp move aimed not at politicians or distant royals, but at someone much closer. Queen Camilla's family had been growing more visible within royal events over the years. Her children and grandchildren had no claim to the throne, but they had been slowly folded into royal life. They attended ceremonies, appeared in programs, and their names started showing up in internal communications. It was subtle, but noticeable. William decided to put an end to it. According to palace sources, William began removing the ceremonial titles and symbolic privileges that had been extended to Camilla's children and grandchildren. He instructed aides to stop mentioning them in royal memos. He made sure their names no longer appeared in public-facing events. The change was orderly and quiet, but the impact inside the palace was huge. For years, there had been quiet discomfort around Camilla's family becoming more involved in royal matters. Some within the palace had looked the other way. Others had quietly voiced concerns. But now, William was making it clear where he stood. He was drawing a clear line between those born into the royal family and those who had married into it. He didn't see space in the institution for honorary figures who had no historical or constitutional ties to the crown. However, Prince William's aides called the move part of a larger plan. According to them, it is a royal reset. It was an effort to define the royal family's future more clearly, to reduce confusion, and to build a structure that could last. The goal wasn't personal revenge or spite. It was about making the monarchy simpler, smaller, and more focused. In William's view, the royal brand had become too stretched. Too many people with loose ties had begun to blur what it meant to be royal. And that was exactly when things began to get interesting. William's decision lit a fire behind the palace walls. Queen Camilla didn't take it lightly. Her reaction was emotional and immediate. She felt blindsided, cornered, and deeply hurt. From her perspective, this wasn't just about changing titles or invitations. It felt like an effort to push her and her family out of the institution they had tried so hard to be accepted into. She had worked for years to earn her place at the heart of the monarchy. That place, in her mind, included a seat at the table for her children and grandchildren as well. Palace source revealed that Queen Camilla broke down in anger and grief when she found out about William's move. She felt it wasn't only a rejection of her relatives, but also of her legacy. It looked to her like the palace was choosing to forget everything she had brought to the royal family. Her anger wasn't political, it was personal. She accused the palace of brushing aside the people who had stood by her during difficult years. It wasn't about the crown or titles. It was about belonging. Inside the palace, staff tried to manage the fallout. No public statement was made. The family kept its usual silence, hoping the storm would pass. But signs of the change were clear. Those who paid close attention noticed Camilla's family disappearing from events they once attended. Booklets from state events no longer carried their names. They stopped appearing in group photographs. Nothing was announced, but everything was different. From William's point of view, it was all necessary. He saw himself as preparing the monarchy for the future. He wanted to keep it focused on direct heirs and essential figures. There was no room for sentiment. He believed the public wanted clarity, not confusion, and he was ready to deliver it. This was William testing his power. It was the first clear sign that he wouldn't shy away from uncomfortable choices. He was stepping into leadership, not with speeches or appearances, but through real decisions that changed how the monarchy looked and functioned. Whether the public fully understood it or not, the monarchy was being reshaped from within. For some insiders, William's move made sense. They believed the monarchy needed to return to basics: fewer faces, less confusion, more purpose. They felt the public had become tired of the extended royal cast. Others thought the move was risky. Pushing Camilla too far could damage the delicate balance that King Charles had worked hard to maintain. Still, no one could deny that William had made his mark. He was no longer just the heir. He was a man making choices that would shape the monarchy long before the crown passed to him. And while the storm with Camilla raged behind closed doors, those closest to William knew one thing for sure: he was just getting started. The monarchy reset had begun, and Camilla's family was the first chapter. But it would not be the last. More changes were coming. Quiet ones, decisive ones. But just before we reveal all of that, let's talk about Queen Camilla's effort to win the heart of the royal family. The sheer scale of her efforts to get accepted and recognized will shock you. Queen Camilla and the royal family. From the outside, Camilla's role in the royal family is simple. She is the queen consort, supportive partner, quiet figure behind the king. But behind the scenes, she had been playing a much more involved and deliberate game. It wasn't loud. It wasn't fast. But over the years, she had slowly and steadily worked to weave her own family into the fabric of the monarchy, step by careful step. After her marriage to Charles in 2005, everything changed. Her children, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes, didn't carry royal titles, and they had no official claim to the throne. But they didn't stay in the background either. Right after the wedding, they began showing up in places that only a few years earlier would have seemed unthinkable: private royal functions, high-level gatherings, quiet holidays with senior royals. The doors didn't burst open for them overnight, but they definitely weren't shut anymore. It began small. Staffers started referring to them informally as part of the Queen's family in documents and planning notes. They weren't listed in official press releases, but their names started showing up in internal seating charts and private guest lists. They weren't being hidden. They were being included deliberately, quietly, and with increasing frequency. The biggest shift came during King Charles's coronation. It wasn't just that Camilla stood beside him as queen. The real signal was who stood behind her. Her grandsons, boys with no royal blood, served as pages of honor during the ceremony. This wasn't a casual photo op. Those roles traditionally went to royal descendants. Choosing her grandchildren for such visible historic roles was not only bold, it was controversial. And it was impossible to ignore. It was the clearest public sign yet that Camilla wasn't just blending into the royal family. She was carving out space for her own. It didn't happen by accident. Behind the scenes, Camilla had been quietly pushing for recognition. She wanted her grandchildren to be seen not just as her relatives, but as figures connected to the crown. She spoke with palace aides about finding ceremonial roles or titles for them. She didn't demand anything outright, but she made sure the conversation never disappeared. Reports also suggest that the Queen worked closely with the palace press team. Over time, they began featuring her children and grandchildren more often in official releases and event coverage. The pictures became more frequent, the references more natural. For the public, it was easy to assume her family simply belonged in the royal mix. But behind those appearances was strategy. She knew that visibility mattered, and she was making sure her family got it. As the years passed, some insiders started to joke that there were two dynasties under one crown: the Windsors with their centuries of lineage, and the Parkers carefully introduced through Camilla's quiet effort. It wasn't exactly equal in weight, but it was visible enough to cause tension. But how did the British public reacted to her efforts? Stay tuned to find out. Well, not everyone was amused. For more traditional royal figures, especially William and Kate, the growing spotlight on non-blood relatives was seen as a threat to the royal family. It blurred lines that had always been drawn with precision. For them, the crown was about lineage, duty, and continuity. Watching Camilla build space for her family, even unofficially, raised alarm bells. Well, not everyone was amused. For more traditional royal figures, especially William and Kate, the growing spotlight on non-blood relatives was seen as a threat to the royal family. It blurred lines that had always been drawn with precision. For them, the crown was about lineage, duty, and continuity. Watching Camilla build space for her family, even unofficially, raised alarm bells. They weren't outspoken about it in public, but behind palace walls, they didn't hide their discomfort. William in particular saw the change as more than just sentimental gestures from his stepmother. He viewed it as a slow attempt to stretch the meaning of royalty. It wasn't personal animosity toward Camilla's children. It was about preserving what he saw as the core identity of the monarchy. And from his perspective, that core didn't include side branches. Palace sources believe that Kate shared the concern, not out of jealousy or rivalry, but because she had worked for years to build trust as a future queen. Seeing Camilla's relatives treated as near equals to her own children made things feel murky. It wasn't about titles, it was about symbolism. Every appearance, every mention chipped away at the distinction between the official royal family and everyone else. Still, Camilla didn't back off. She continued to nudge things forward, never too fast, but never stopping either. She wasn't demanding thrones or crowns. She was playing a longer game, one where her family could, over time, become part of the royal furniture. Not by force, but through familiarity. The more the public saw them, the more normal it would feel. And in many ways, it worked. By the time the monarchy was undergoing its next phase under King Charles, the presence of Camilla's family wasn't questioned by most people. The casual observer saw them at royal events, in glossy magazines, and on palace steps, and assumed they were part of the picture. That was exactly the outcome she wanted. a legacy that wouldn't be undone the moment she stepped away. But building a legacy in a system rooted in bloodlines was always going to trigger resistance. The more visible Camilla's family became, the more determined others were to push back, especially William. The royal family had entered a quiet tug of war over identity. One side wanted tradition, the other wanted space. We have come to the most interesting part of the video. Keep witnessing for the amazing revelations ahead. As Camilla continued to press forward with her quiet strategy, what she didn't see, or perhaps chose to ignore, was that William was watching her moves, and what Williams did next caught her off guard. Prince William's long game. We mentioned earlier that Prince William always believed the monarchy should stick to its roots. In his mind, only direct blood royals should represent the crown. No one else. No room for confusion or extra branches that didn't belong to the main tree. He didn't say this out loud in public speeches, but his actions were starting to speak for him, and the message was becoming hard to miss. For years, William had watched how people reacted to the royal family. He paid attention. What stood out to him was how uncomfortable people were when non-blood relatives started getting royal perks. The public didn't seem to like seeing those who hadn't earned their place by birth showing up at big events or being treated like royalty. That stuck with him. He saw it as a sign that the monarchy needed to get back to basics. William looked back at how things were done in the past. Prince Philip kept things simple. He focused on duty, not drama. Queen Elizabeth followed the same path. She knew the place of tradition, but also understood when to keep things tight and focused. William respected that. He also looked at King George VI, who had to pull the monarchy together after the chaos of the abdication crisis. He trimmed away titles and cut back on the extended family. And there was Queen Victoria, too. Even though she had more grandchildren than anyone could count, she kept control over who actually played a public role. But this wasn't just about structure. For William, it was also personal. He had never liked Camilla, not because of gossip or outside noise, but because of what he saw growing up. She had been the third person in his parents' marriage, the wedge that helped break them apart. He saw the fights. He saw the pain his mother went through. And when his father said he was marrying Camilla in 2005, William and Harry didn't take it lightly. They both tried to stop it. They asked him not to go through with it. But their father moved forward anyway, and they had to live with it. That history didn't just fade away. It stayed with William, especially when he started noticing how Camilla was slowly pulling her own family into the royal space. Her children and her grandchildren were popping up at events, getting mentions in palace memos, even standing beside the king during big ceremonies. To William, it felt like something was being rewritten right in front of him, and he wasn't going to let that happen quietly. So he started to act. He sent out quiet instructions inside the palace. Event planners were told to cut back on inviting extended relatives. As this all took shape, Camilla's circle started feeling the cold. Invitations that used to come without question were no longer arriving. Mentions in internal briefings vanished. Public roles that once seemed available were suddenly off the table. No one had to spell it out. Everyone knew this was coming from William. He wasn't acting out of anger, even if the feelings around Camilla ran deep. This was about the future. He was planning ahead. He didn't want to carry a crown weighed down by side stories. He wanted something that made sense to the people, and it was working. Slowly, things inside the palace began to shift. Journalists started asking questions. Royal watchers noticed who wasn't showing up anymore. The silence around it only made it clearer. The crown was tightening its circle, and William was calling the shots. At the center of it all stood William and Kate. With Harry out of the picture and other royals either sidelined or retired, they became the heartbeat of the monarchy. This gave William the space to set a new tone, one that didn't make room for Camilla's growing branch. So, how did Queen Camilla react to William's decision? Well, her reaction was shocking, and that's what we'll reveal next. Queen Camilla's reaction. The moment Camilla found out about William's official move to cut out her family, everything stopped for her. It wasn't just a minor detail in some royal memo. It hit like a punch she didn't see coming. What followed was not a quiet reaction or a calm conversation behind closed doors. According to insiders, she erupted in a way palace staff hadn't seen before. Her anger was fierce. She lashed out at those around her, shouting, pacing, demanding answers. She saw it not just as a policy change, but as a calculated attack, something meant to embarrass her and strip away everything she had worked so hard to build. What really stung wasn't just the decision itself. It was the way it happened. No heads up, no warning, no private talk from William. It came down as a cold order, signed off and distributed without any space for her voice. That silence hurt the most. After all these years by Charles's side, after all the public work, the speeches, the visits, the handshakes, she felt tossed aside like she didn't matter. She canceled her scheduled appearances that week and stayed mostly out of sight. Staff close to her said she wasn't herself. She skipped meals, she stayed in her rooms, and when no one else was around, she broke down completely. The tears didn't stop easily. This wasn't about duty anymore, it was personal. In those hours, she kept going back to the same thought. She believed William was trying to wipe her name off the royal story, not just her family's presence at events, not just titles or mentions. She feared this was the beginning of her complete erasure from royal memory. The timing and the method, she felt, weren't random. To her, it seemed like the whole thing had been designed to hurt her on purpose. Like someone had waited for the right moment to make her feel small. But that is not all. You see, Camilla, at her core, never saw herself as just a step in. She had spent years climbing uphill, through heavy public judgment, through whispers in the press, through cold stares behind palace doors. She endured all of it to be by Charles's side, and she believed that, over time, she had earned her space, not just for herself, but for her children and grandchildren too. For her, their presence wasn't a favor. It was part of her story, something she thought the crown had come to accept. But now, it all felt like it was being swept away. In private, she shared with aides that she didn't think this was really about royal structure at all. She believed this was still about Diana. In her view, William had never let go of what happened in the past. He had always seen her as the person who caused pain in his mother's life. Camilla thought William's decision wasn't just about who belonged in the royal inner circle. She saw it as an old wound reopened, with her at the center again. What made things even harder was her growing suspicion about Kate's role. Camilla felt that Kate hadn't just watched this unfold from the sidelines. She believed Kate had played a quiet part in backing William's choice. That smile Kate often wore now seemed, to Camilla, like a sign of quiet satisfaction. In her mind, Kate didn't have to say anything out loud. Her silence had said enough. Camilla began to feel more isolated than ever. As all this settled in, it became clear this wasn't just a reaction to being left off a list. This was about love, about being accepted, about a legacy that she had fought tooth and nail to shape. Camilla wasn't just trying to hold on to titles or appearances. She was fighting to protect the story of her life with Charles, the one she thought she had earned the right to finish on her own terms. Now that story was slipping away, piece by piece, name by name. And as her emotions spilled over behind palace walls, it was becoming obvious that this quiet war within the royal family wasn't cooling down anytime soon. Because the deeper this went, the more it stopped being about royal roles. It was about memory, identity, and who gets to be remembered when the history books are written. Thank you for staying with us. What do you think about William's decision to cut off Camilla's children from the royal line? Share your opinions with us in the comments section. If you enjoyed the video, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Also, click the following video on your screen, and you will enjoy it.